back to Our Home Libraries. For today's episode, we're going to be discussing Happy Place by Emily Henry, which is one of our most, and probably I feel like a lot of people's most anticipated new release for 2023.
I agree.
Especially after Book Lovers, which I loved. And I feel like, Carrie,
Same.
we both really enjoyed that one.
That's like my favorite book that she's written.
Yeah, me too. But this one is very good. So we're going to get into the discussion for this one. As usual, we're going to be spoiling it because we're going to be talking about the whole book. So if it's one you want to read, which we recommend because we are definitely Emily Henry fans on this podcast, go read it and then come on back and listen to us. And as always, check out any of our other content that we have on our Instagram, Facebook, YouTube channel. And yeah, as usual, this is Our Home Libraries, plural, because it's the two of us.
Yeah, and I guess as a little life update, since I announced my engagement on this podcast, I am now married. So if you want a little glimpse of the wedding, what we got up to, I did post a couple of reels over on Instagram if you haven't seen those yet. But I don't want to talk about it too much. It was great. It was beautiful. I got married at Disney World. That's really all we need to say.
I want to touch on it.
We probably all predicted this. We predicted that I was going to get married at Disney World.
I want to touch on that a little bit because Carrie got married at Disney World, which is the happiest place on earth. And Happy Place released the week before you got married. And I read the whole thing one of the nights when we were in Disney for your wedding. So I'm reading Happy Place in the happiest place on earth for, I would say, Carrie's happiest day of her life thus far.
A really happy occasion.
Yeah, so it was just a really cool, I don't know.
All the happy at one
It all
time.
just went really well together, so I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I could not save the book. I had every intention of saving it because we drove down to Florida from North Carolina. So, like, it was a 9-hour drive for us. And I had every intention of saving it for the drive, but I couldn't. I went and bought it the day it was released, and I stayed up until God knows when and finished it that day, or I guess the next morning. So, yeah, anyway, into the summary. Our main character is Harriet, and she finally has some time off from her medical residency to go on a yearly trip with all of her best friends. And it turns out that her ex, Wynn, was also invited, largely because they neglected to tell anyone that they broke up 6 months ago. So now they're sharing the master bedroom for a week, and they can't really come clean to their friends because the cottage that they're staying in, which is Harriet's happy place, is being put up for sale. Her friend's father owns it, her friend Sabrina or whatever. Not only is this like a last hurrah for the cottage, but two of the friends announced that they are engaged on the first night. So they can't really put a damper on all this good stuff by telling people that they aren't together anymore. They kind of have to fake it till they make it and like try not to notice all the feelings that are starting to bubble up between them. So we've got the forced proximity, we've got the second chance, we've got a little bit of fake dating, I suppose. So yeah, like all of some of the best romance tropes in my opinion. But all in all, what did you think of Happy Place?
Well, so I absolutely loved it, but I want to pivot for one moment because you mentioned all the types of romance tropes, and Carrie got me this really cute bookmark that lists a bunch of different romance tropes, and then on the back it says, I'm just here for the romance. And I mentioned to my husband, like, oh, like, look at this cute bookmark about all the romance tropes, and he goes, what's a trope? I was like...
If you're watching on YouTube, here is the bookmark because I got myself one also.
So he said, what's a trope? And I said, honey.
Oh no.
And I showed him the bookmark.
Oh no, he's not a literature man.
Definitely not a romance man for sure. But back to...
Every book you ever read has a trope.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes. And I feel like a lot of books usually have just like a thread of some sort of like romance. It's because it's life. That's like...
Yeah.
But...
It is. You're right.
I loved Happy Place. I gave it a 5 out of 5 Emily Henrys because I'm obsessed with Emily Henry. I thought it was so good. I loved the whole... I really like sometimes like the fake dating, and I love like forced proximity because it makes people like work through some things. And that was the issue between our two main characters, is that they never really had this closure that they needed because they lived in two different areas. They were doing long distance while they were dating. So forcing them together to work through this was really awesome. There was some flashbacks to like how their relationship started, which I also really enjoyed. So like we could see like the build
I
up.
love flashbacks.
Me too. So I really liked it. If I have to compare all of Emily Henry's works, I still think I like Book Lovers a little bit more. I just am so obsessed with Nora and Charlie and that it just a little bit better for me.
Yeah.
But this was very good.
I'm obsessed with them as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, I gave this 4 out of 5, and largely because it just didn't really live up to the love that I have for Book Lovers. So, like, if Book Lovers is a 5, then I have to give this 4.
Okay.
Okay, but it still rates higher for me than what's it called?
The People We Meet on Vacation or Beach Read.
Yes, that's probably my least.
That
favorite.
one is my least favorite.
The People We Meet on
But
Vacation,
still
is
a
probably my
great
least
book.
favorite.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, this book was okay. There were a lot of bits in there that I was like, this is relatable, but I didn't find myself fawning over Harriet and Wynne like I do with Nora and Charlie. And honestly, when I was going back to answer these questions, I could not remember any of the other characters' names. But also, let's keep in mind that I read this book and then like less than a week later I got married. So like so much has happened since I read this book that I forgot.
That's what I was going to say. I feel like you read this book, it was great, and then you just had like super excitement in your life, so it just kind of got pushed back a little bit.
Yeah, there were a few days in there that I was like largely running on adrenaline, and my brain was like, everything else happened 5 years ago.
Gone.
This is today. Everything else not here anymore. So maybe I need to reread it. I have said to Kayla, like we were texting, and I was like, I think I need to reread this because I just don't remember a lot of it.
Yeah.
But, you know, I will. Emily Henry is a fast read for me. Like I said, right at the day it published.
And pretty much I think you and I will probably read anything that Emily Henry publishes. She's a really good writer. You read it, it feels like joyful reading through it. I like her work, so.
I've found a lot of her books to be relatable in terms of the main female characters in her monologue. Yeah. Like, I find that I myself think that way sometimes. And especially in this book, we'll get more into it later, but Harriet had a lot of turmoil with her career path and had a lot of instances where you could tell she was trying to deal with a lot of loneliness that she felt in her life. And I found her monologue or her inner dialogue about that very relatable.
Yeah, same.
But we'll get into that. The questions that we're discussing come from the publisher, which is Penguin Random House, and I have linked the reading guide that was created for Happy Place in the description for this episode. But before the events of this book, we know that Harriet and Wynne's friend group has a pretty consistent, pretty seamless experience traveling together. They do every single year. They get together, they go to this cottage, and they just relax for a week. What do you think that you would look for in an ideal travel partner? And have you ever taken a trip that put a relationship to the test?
My favorite travel partner is my husband. We only butt heads a little bit because he is go, 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 go. And I sometimes like a little less go.
You know what? Bradley's the same way. He wants to go, and I'm like, I want to look at the pretty things.
Right, absolutely. So I feel like you and I are similar in that. I'm a big fan of having like kind of a general outline, like a few big things that maybe we want to do wherever we're going, but then just like relax. Like maybe like we went to Wilmington somewhat recently. I just wanted to walk down the river walk. And just see what happens. Jeff was like, okay, where should we go next? What should we do? Which is who he is. I love him for it. But still my favorite travel partner. And now we have our daughter, and she's awesome to travel with. She was a total champ at Disney World. So,
oh my gosh, you guys. Kayla sent me so many pictures and so many videos, and that child is adorable. Okay, first of all, the one where you sent me where she was like knocked out in her stroller, I laughed about that every time I looked at it. I was like, that girl is She's out.
There was definitely, and like people that saw, because she had her leg like half out the stroller. And so I swear everyone we passed at Magic Kingdom was also like chuckling at her because she was passed out, and she was like lounging. It was great. But
I wish I could be that comfortable.
same, and have someone push me around in a stroller because your feet are pretty tired after a day at Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, for sure.
But I've never had a relationship like put to a test from a trip. But maybe it's because I've been with my husband for a lot of years, so that's who I travel with. Yeah.
Perhaps.
What about for you?
Yeah. I think I'm kind of like somewhere in the middle between you and Jeff. I'm the kind of person who plans in depth before I go. And then when I get there, I like see things I want to do and I go off of my plan. Like I'm no longer sticking to the plan kind of thing.
Yeah, you're okay to like pivot
so
a little bit and adjust.
yeah, yeah. So I like to think I'm a big planner and that my ideal travel partner would have to be more like go with the flow and kind of do what I want to do because I'm the boss, you know? And I guess now that I have a husband, he has to do what I want to do because I'm the boss. And I have taken a trip in the past that really tested a relationship, and that relationship ultimately ended. Without saying too much, this was a person that I dated in high school, and for my graduation, my parents took myself and this guy I was dating on a cruise, which is like great, love that. And my dad, his one thing was that if we were not going to be with mom and dad, we had to always be together. We could not be separate, like doing our own things. Like we needed a buddy, buddy system kind of thing. Yeah, the first night that went out the window. We were playing mini golf. He got mad at me for whatever reason and walked off. So
Friction.
yeah, we broke up after I went to college because he was a year younger than me.
We need to
And,
talk about the
that
fact that you
never
guys
works out.
went on a cruise and like maybe did not last too long after it. My cousins, so they have a pretty large family. It's my aunt and uncle, and there's 5 kids. And they took their whole family and significant others on a cruise. And I kid you not, every relationship that went on that boat, besides my aunt and uncle, broke up.
Oh,
So
no.
we called it the love boat as like a joke because every relationship that went on that boat did not last, like I would say like more than a week after the trip was done. Everyone broke up.
Oh, no.
This was years ago, so I
Are cruises like the doom of relationships?
maybe if you're already on the fence, don't do it, or maybe do it and just put the the end to it.
I could see it can be hard to like agree. There's so much to do on cruises that it would be easy to argue about
Yeah.
what you're gonna do. Yeah, I get that. Um, Outside of romantic relationships, or I guess including since you and Jeff have been together for so long, have you had many close relationships that have spanned different phases of your life, and how have those relationships changed with time?
Yeah, I had 2 that I talked about, and the first being my husband. That's the most significant relationship in my life and the longest. And I kid you not, he has been a total hottie to me when we were teenagers, in our 20s, and now in our 30s. So 3 decades of my life, kinda, and he's still just like the bee's knees. He is just awesome.
So I need to tell a story before you continue with this. I need to tell a story that relates to this conversation that we're having. Before Kayla had the baby, she had a bunch of people over, like some people that work with Jeff, and invited me over. And Kayla was drinking, and she'd had enough to drink. You know what I mean? And I swear, towards the end of the night, she just kept looking at me and she was like, "Look at my husband. My husband is so hot, don't you think?" And I was like, "Yeah, Kayla, sure."
He's just so hot to me.
This bald guy.
I love him. He's just...
Well, that's okay. That's good. Back to the question, how have your relationships, your long-term relationships changed with time?
Well, that's the thing. I think that that's why Jeff and I have been together for so long, is that our relationship has grown and changed, and we've kind of grown and changed together. Like the things that we did and were interested in high school and our 20s and now our 30s are totally different. you know, if one of us was stuck in one of those phases, I don't know how we would still be together. But thankfully, we've grown and changed together. And then the other significant relationship is actually my best friend Emma. Her and I have been friends since we were like 9 years old, actually even younger because we were in Girl Scouts together. But all the way through now. And it's because like we've had moments in our life where we maybe have not been as close, you know, like just how time goes. We don't live near each other, but we usually always find our way back to each other. So that's another significant relationship in my life. Actually, when I was driving to your shower, she was driving to a shower, and we were able to call each other because we both were in the car for kind of a while, and we just like caught up quick. So it's just finding time for those relationships.
Yeah, I'm not good at that. I haven't really had any friendships that have lasted through like different phases of my life. Like I had friends in high school. I'm just not very good at keeping in touch with people. That and that's partially my fault. I understand that communication is a two-way street. So it's not I'm not going to blame myself entirely. But I'm not good at keeping in touch with people at all. Like my friendship with you, Kayla, is probably the closest I've come to something like that because I just don't talk to anybody from high school anymore or college. And even like who I would consider my best friend from high school, our lives just don't really align anymore.
Yeah.
She went into the family thing like a lot. I don't want to say too fast, but faster than I did. I mean, like I said, I'm almost 30 and I'm just now thinking like maybe I want to have
Yeah.
kids.
It's just different phases at different times.
Yeah. It just our lifestyles never really aligned after high school, and I've tried to like send her a message here and there, but
Yeah.
it's just never consistent.
Relationships are hard, platonic and romantic relationships that takes like a lot of work. Like a
Mm-hmm.
lot. And sometimes you just don't have the energy or the effort for some of them, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just hard.
Well, I definitely credit this podcast with like helping us stay in
Yeah.
touch because when I moved away from dad, it was like we were pretty good friends at that point, and it was like I'm moving really far
Yeah.
away, and I definitely credit this with helping us
Thank goodness for
stay in
books.
touch because I'm not good at that.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, thank goodness for books. You're right.
So, in every book, right, there's different types of conflict. And for our main character in this book, Harriet, she tends to avoid conflict. So, are you more like her where you avoid it, or do you face it head on, and has that changed over time for you?
It really depends on who the conflict is with. So, like with family members, I tend to avoid conflict, especially with my sister, because we can get in some pretty heated arguments. And if you're listening, Anna, don't deny it because we do.
It's just like,
But like in my relationship with my now husband, I tend to face conflict head on. And that's definitely something that has changed over time for me. I used to be entirely avoidant, but I think as I've gotten older, I've kind of realized that effective communication in a relationship is really important in a romantic relationship. And it's kind of just better to come out and say what's bothering you and address it. So I think Bradley and I are both more grateful in the end that we hash things out
yeah,
immediately instead of stewing over
right,
it.
and just letting it like keep building up. Um, I
Yeah.
think I'm more direct about stuff. If I have an issue, I like to just get it out there, get it resolved. I think that I can be maybe a little harsh if I feel as though I have been disrespected or treated unkind to, and even more so if it's like if someone has ever done anything towards like my husband or my sister or my sister-in-laws, I get very like protective over them. So as much as I like to handle things like diplomatically and try to wrap it up in a neat bow to like get it then resolved, sometimes I don't always have the grace that I would like to. Working on it, trying to be better. I'm not here to
That's all you
Yeah,
can
I
do.
never want to be
Just try
like
to
the
be better.
person that has ever like made someone like cry or be upset from like discussing something, because I have had that happen like in the work setting. And I then feel terrible because it's never my intention, especially like at
Yeah.
work. It's just like there's stuff that needs to get done. I did find that a little jarring when we moved to Florida, because where we were in Florida was essentially like lower Alabama, so like the deep south, and just how things are communicated is very different than
Totally different.
me.
Totally
Yeah,
different.
so
Yeah.
I had inadvertently like made people feel, upset after a conversation that I was like, whoa, I thought this was like a quick like, hey, can you do this instead of this? So working on how I communicate is always something I'm
Hmm.
working on. So
Yeah, it is definitely kind of a regional thing when you mean like in the workplace. Um, because I feel like even in North Carolina, like we're not deep south, but we're still southern, and we tend to be a little bit more like beat around the
yeah.
bush. Like I'm gonna make some suggestion of what I really want to say, and I'm gonna hope you
Right.
get it,
Right.
kind of thing, for sure. But it is important, I think, to be very like upfront and more blunt, because if you do the beat around the bush thing, that's when you get misunderstandings, and yeah, it's better to just
Yeah.
say what you mean. Of this friend group, we had uh, namely Sabrina and Cleo. I had to go back into the pages and like look up these names. Sabrina is kind of like Sabrina, Harriet, and Cleo. They were like roommates their freshman year of college, so that's how this friend group kind of started. And then we had significant others that are brought into this. Um, Out of this friend group, who would you say that you relate with or relate to the most?
I think Harriet, in regards to like working this job that she thought she'd always wanted, and then realizing like maybe her passion lies elsewhere, and just like second guessing herself.
Yes.
But then I also picked her as kind of the least, because how she treated Win was not like how I would treat a significant other. And also the
Mm.
fact that this was my actually one grievance with this book is actually what really irritated me. So to jump ahead a little bit, it ends up being that she's unhappy with her job. She ends up leaving her career as a doctor and works at a pottery studio. She probably has $300,000 in loans,
Yeah.
if not more. You can't just
I cannot
you cannot
imagine.
just leave that career. You do not have to be a neurosurgeon, but you need to be a doctor of some sort to pay that off. I have questioned,
Yeah, you'll never pay it off.
right,
If
as
as a pottery studio,
and like I feel like
like you occasionally go and you teach beginners, like no, you're never gonna pay
no,
it off.
like you need to keep working that job and then do your pottery as your passion. Like that's how life goes, right? Not every job we have fills us up with like joy and love, but you do it to like pay the bills. And then you find other places to do your passion. So like we have all heard me, sometimes pharmacy isn't great for me. I do this podcast as my passion thing. Like you need to find a balance.
Yeah. But also, like, this podcast doesn't earn us
No.
any money. So, if either of us were like to quit our jobs and be like, I'm doing this podcast full time, we would be really
Yeah.
broke. We would have no money. Um, but yeah, Harriet, I mean, she's a wishful thinker. We'll give that to her. She wants to follow her passion and earn this, what I assume is probably minimum wage at a pottery studio. But yeah, also, maybe when he's got this like furniture thing going on, so maybe she thinks that she can kind of like scooch in there and be like, I'm gonna sell some of my pottery.
Well, and I think that it was
with your
implied
tables.
that Win is selling his tables for like very large sums of money. So
Oh yeah, a
maybe he
lot.
could cover her loans.
Maybe.
But there's no
Yeah,
way
maybe.
her job is paying for all of that. So I that was the one part that it actually really made me mad. That is the one part of this book I don't like. Maybe now as I'm talking about this, I have to give it like a 4.5 out of 5 stars, because that part actually really
Oh
irked me.
no. Okay, so we kind of just brought this up, that a lot of Harriet's journey through this book is trying to figure out whether she should let go of this dream of being a neurosurgeon because it doesn't really excite her anymore, despite the fact that she has invested all this time and energy, and I assume has a lot of student loan debt revolving around being a neurosurgeon. So do you relate to that aspect of her? Have you ever had a time in your life where you had to make a decision like this? And what did you do?
I think you should answer first because I just like took over that last question.
Yeah. I mean, I really empathized with this aspect of Harriet's character because I have really struggled with my career path, and I continue to struggle with whether I'm working in a field that fulfills and excites me. And I sometimes wish that I'd done something in literature or publishing. And, you know, like you, I think that this podcast does represent that outlet for me. Getting to read books and talk about them with my best friend is really great. But yeah, I kind of, even today, I really struggle with, is what I'm doing what I want to do for the rest of my life? And sometimes I don't think it is, but also the next step, the way for me to get to the thing that will be fulfilling is like very overbearing. Like it's hard to think about taking that step because of the amount of time that I would have to invest and the amount of money that I would have to put into that to do what I really want to do with my life.
Along with the fact that you've already put in time and money for where you're currently at. Because that's my thing. Like, I'm a pharmacist. There are some aspects of my job that I really love, and there's some stuff that I really do not. And to then, like, think about, like, pivoting to something else, it just seems like a lot of barriers.
It is definitely. I mean, I would say that for me, where I am right now in my career could be viewed as a stepping stone to get where I want to be. But, you know, I can give you more detail for those of you who are listening. To do what I really want to do, which would be humanitarian work, things like identifying immigrants that have died as they're crossing the border into the U.S., or identifying people in mass graves that have died as a result of war. Like, I really want to do something humanitarian that is like benefiting society as a whole. And I think that would be very fulfilling to me. But to get there, I have to get a PhD and I have to get a board certification in my field. And getting a PhD is another 6 to 8 years of my life in school. It is another $100,000 in student loans. It means moving halfway across the country to get into a program that will really facilitate what I want to do. And yeah, that is all very overwhelming. Yeah. It's like, do I really want to leave where I am now to take the chance to go into debt, to invest this time, and then potentially still not really be happy in my career? That's
scary.
And I know I'm not the only person in the world that has these thoughts and feels this way. So if you're listening and you can empathize with me, then yay.
It's hard. It's really hard.
It is.
And I feel as though a lot of pressure gets put on, because now we're old, Carrie, but our youth, when you're like leaving high school and they're like, all right, what do you want to do with your life? Like, what?
Yeah.
What? Like, I don't know. And then you get put on this like trajectory.
And there are so many things. Yeah, and then 10 years later, you're like, I didn't know that was a job.
I know.
Like, that's cool as shit. I want to do that.
I know.
You know? But now you're like 30 and you're like, can I really like stop what I'm doing now and like screw everything I did for the last 10 years and start over? Like,
which I guess makes Harriet very admirable in this book, that she was like, forget everything that I worked for. This is what I really want to do. So maybe she is inspirational.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, but also she's brave. I'll give her that. She's brave. Anyway, this kind of plays into thinking about what you might would do if you had a second life, because this friend group, I mean, I guess they kind of play a game. They talk about what they might would do if they had another entire life to live. Um, yeah, what do you think you would do?
I
If you could say, screw the last 10 years, I'm going to start over, what do you think you
I
would do?
really would not have picked healthcare. I
Hmm.
The whole like industry, there's just so much there that you end up not feeling great, which is sad to
Mm.
say. So I would pick honestly like any other field.
Kayla's like, literally anything
Anything
else.
else. Um but like all the other aspects of my life I really love. So sometimes I think like to not put as much emphasis on your career. Like I don't like when people introduce someone and the first thing they say is like what their job is. Like there are so many more interesting things
Mm.
about everyone in our lives and what their job is. So I think we just need to shift away from that and then people won't feel as much pressure about it.
Yeah, I mean, your job is really not the most important part of your character.
No.
So,
No.
do you think that the pandemic has in any way played a significant role in how you feel about your job?
Yeah, yeah. I It really makes you a little bit more jaded. Honestly, and in the retail setting, and I'm sure if any of my pharmacy friends are listening to this, anyone that has worked retail, when the pandemic happened, instead of people being more understanding because this was new for everyone in the entire world, people got
Mm-hmm.
mean. They were so mean. I have seen more, for lack of a better word, hissy fits post pandemic than I did the years before that I was a pharmacist and a pharmacy tech. Like I've been doing this for a while now. And yeah, people got really ugly.
Yeah, I gotta say that I saw that in my career field as well, because I started my job like right at the tail end, what most people consider the tail end of the pandemic. Not saying that COVID doesn't exist anymore, because it definitely does. People still catch it. But the panic has kind of like
Subsided.
died
Yeah.
down, you know? Yeah. So like right when the panic was starting to go away, and they wanted to reinstate having classes in person for the university, I had a lot of students. The main class that I teach is considered gen ed credit. So a lot of the students that I had were fresh out of high school, and they had spent the last 2 years doing online high school, which was probably a whole lot of bullshit. Um, so yeah, they come into my class and think that they can do what they want, not submit assignments until the end of the semester, and that I'm just gonna be like, yeah, okay, that's fine. But like, this is college. Like, you're at a university now.
Which like that's not how it should be. Like
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I feel like I can't even imagine
No.
elementary, middle school, high school, how many teachers are leaving the field, educators are leaving the field because of this like entitlement coming from
Mm-hmm.
students and
And
parents.
where does that
I
come
don't
from?
know. I don't know.
I don't feel like I ever felt that way, like, about any of my teachers ever. Like, grade school, university, grad school, like, none of that. Like, you want to be super respectful, because especially once you start getting to like graduate level
The world gets a
courses,
lot
like, these are
smaller.
the people that are going to make or break your career, you know? Like, these are the people who are going to get you
Mm-hmm.
jobs.
Yeah.
And you're going to sit here and be like, there's just something I don't like about you, and I'm going to make sure you what is
I don't know.
that?
I don't know.
Back into this. At the beginning of the book, I guess Penguin Random House believes that Harriet is really living for the weekend. Those the exact words. Um, what that truly means, who knows? But do you find yourself experiencing that? Or do you like to find ways, find joy in your everyday life during the
I
week?
mean, I feel like everyone prefers the weekend or whatever your weekend is. When you have a couple days off from whatever like your career is, it's nice. Like I get to spend the weekend with my husband and my daughter all day together. I love that. That brings me a lot of joy. So I don't feel any shame in looking forward to that at all. So, yeah, I live for the weekends as well. And then I live for the time of day when I get off work and I get to hang with my kid.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Hmm. I don't know, maybe my job is just a lot more flexible than a typical job because I don't find myself being like, oh, I wish it was Saturday, or like, I don't know, like I don't work a
Yeah,
normal
you do have a little bit more
like
flexibility.
9 to 5 job. I mean, honestly, this past semester I went to campus 3 days a week, and only one of those days is actually like a full work day. Tuesdays suck. In general, I would be home for lunch, so not bad work days for me.
Yeah, you definitely have more flexibility with your days, which I think probably helps. If you have like a really regimented schedule, I could see
Hmm.
that being harder, like getting through the week maybe.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that Bradley is a kind of person that like lives for the weekend, and he definitely has like a strict 7 to 4 every
Mm-hmm.
weekday, and he really looks forward to just being at home and doing nothing on
Yeah,
the
that
weekends,
makes sense to me.
basically.
So we've kind of been talking around this for pretty much all the questions, but this book specifically really looks at kind of each of the characters and different versions of success and happiness and how it looks different for each one of these characters. And how would you say that you define each of those, success and happiness?
I kind of view success as a term that is related to your career,
Yeah, I agree.
but like happiness is more of like an overarching thing, like an overarching term for every aspect of your life.
I would agree with that. And I guess maybe as a parent, like that someday when my kid is grown, that hopefully I'll look back and be like, I successfully raised my kid
Mm.
to be a good adult, like a good person. So maybe that
Hmm.
would be another part of my life that I might at some point look at it as successful or not.
Yeah,
But
yeah. And then when your kids have kids, you'll you'll be all introspective, and you'll be like, I was reproductively successful in the eyes of
there
evolution.
you go. In the eyes of evolution.
I am reproductively successful. Oh, anyway, this whole book, it's called Happy Place. And for Harriet, her happy place is in this cottage. This is the place that she can go and literally nothing else matters.
Mm-hmm.
Like she can just be, you know? So, do you have a happy place? Is it an actual place? Is it an experience? Is it a person? And how has your happy place changed over time?
Yeah. Mine's definitely people. It's my husband and my kid. That's my happy place. So if we go somewhere together, then that becomes my happy place because we're there together. But I do have like a couple physical locations that do genuinely make me happy. The one is my sister's cottage, and then my parents have a cottage. It's on the lake. It it reminds me of this book in regards to like being on the water, not having a lot of other
Yeah.
cares because you're just at this place, usually with your favorite people. So for Harriet, it's her friends. For me, it's my sister, my parents. So whenever I'm at those locations, I instantly feel happy and like a little bit more relaxed. So those would be my places. Yeah. What about you?
I think my dad's house would be my happy
Yeah.
place. And, I really just wish I had more time to be there. But anytime I have a long weekend, during summer, anytime I think about going somewhere just to be somewhere, it's usually my dad's house. I need to get down there soon.
Yeah.
I feel like it's been too long since I was down there. And like honestly, in a more like if I were in my head and I was like, ideally this would be my happy place. Before this past week, I probably would have said Disney World, but let me tell you, I'm getting too old for the amusement park thing. But by the end of it, we were like, I'd really just want to like be sitting by a pool or something. Like
Yeah.
our next vacation is going to be a cruise so that we can just do nothing. Yeah, my feet were hurting. Our backs were hurting. I'm too old.
It's
Maybe one day when I have a kid, I will go again, but
It's one of those, I feel like people have probably heard this, but it's like when you need a vacation from your vacation, like you need a few days to decompress because you were like doing everything, and that's very much a Disney trip. It's like go, go, go.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But anyways, in our next episode, you're all going to be so happy to hear this. We are continuing with our discussion of Sarah J. Maas books with A Court of Wings and Ruin. So as a reminder, we left off in this series with Feyre's two sisters being forced into the cauldron and then coming out high fae, and Feyre pretending to break free of this non-existent spell that was cast over her by Rhysand to become a Night Court spy in Tamlin's Spring Court. So we'll be seeing where the story goes from there.
Yeah,
it's a big one.
I love that we're going from
it's a big book.
One author we love to another author we love. We're just so many good books so far for this season of our home libraries. So thanks everyone for tuning in.
I promise you guys, we are gonna mix it up in the future. Okay,
you can't.
We will not do Sarah J. Maas. Once we're done with what she has published in the ACOTAR world so far, we're not going to publish any more Sarah J. Maas until 2024. So if you're getting annoyed and you're like, I'm so done with Sarah J. Maas, please stop. Like, you'll have a good break, okay? We're going to mix it up, don't worry.
Yeah. But thank you, as always, for tuning in. For this one, because they were in Maine, maybe leave a lobster emoji for all the lobster rolls that they ate that I was actually very jealous of. And give us a comment there. Let us know if you enjoyed this one, if you're going to read it. I think it, like we said, it's pretty highly anticipated by a lot of people, and I think it lived up to the hype. Emily Henry is a great author, and we enjoyed it. So thanks everyone for tuning in.
Yeah. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.